Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Unfiltered Discussions. If we can get through this podcast with not bending over and peeing our pants, we're going to consider it a win because we're already howling before we get into this. So my name is Kelly, and I am joined by Peter and Jenny and Stacey and David. You can certainly go to our website, Unfiltered Vet Discussions, to read more about us. Join us on our social media platforms as well as podcast platforms. And like, share, and actually, we really would like to hear your comments on this one. So please chime in. So the topic is, can you fire asshole clients? So Jenny, I'm going to pop it over to you. And then I think Peter has a few words to say.
Just a few. So the brief answer is yes, you can. There you go.
And
Done.
sure.
We're done. Right. No, here's what I have found is, so we were talking before we got on about kind of the economic state. I know that Stacey and Peter have talked about, pricing yourself so that, people can still walk through the door. And, we've talked about people who maybe are abusive, clients who are abusive. And I think that, um, you know, I don't personally have that real problem. Our clients trust us because we have fired the assholes. And when I say assholes, I mean people who have that question absolutely everything we do, everything. It just whatever we say, it's, well, that's not what my breeder said, that's not what Google said, that's not what my groomer said, that's not what my best friend who's a human nurse said. Okay. We fire the people who physically threaten. I had a guy who told one of my receptionists that she deserved a flat slap across the face. And then he told me he was kidding. And I said, well, you can go kid someplace else. I'm sending you your records. Use belligerent language. Who we don't fire is people who are truly, truly upset, who are maybe going through some things. And, I have one client recently who she just lost her father. She just lost her dog. And that just happened. So I have not talked to her yet she ended up going to an emergency clinic that was closer to her house than us. The euthanasia took 3 hours. They couldn't, it was just a horrifying thing. She obviously was irate, upset. I would never fire this person because they're clearly going through some things. So I think that, yes, you can fire the assholes, but you really need to come up with, what are your lines? What's that line in the sand for you? But I think that there are enough of us veterinarians out there. I'm not a veterinarian. Enough of us veterinary clinics out there that, you know what? Go someplace else. Find someone who better meets your needs, but you're not going to come here and belittle my team or make them feel less than or anything like that. And for those people who just argue with us about everything, I fired one lady and I said, ma'am, we consider ourselves a team when it comes to your pet's healthcare. You clearly don't trust us and you don't want to be on our team. So we are not meeting your needs. And she tried to argue with me. That's not true. And I'm like, see, right now you're arguing with me. Again. So it's better for you to find a vet that better meets your needs. And it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be drawn out. You have the right to decline services other than in a really horrible emergent situation, I guess, depending on your state. But yes, you can fire the asshole clients.
And
Gentlemen, don't have an argument with Jenny. I will promise you you're not going to win.
Won't end well.
So foundationally, Jenny, and this goes back to, leadership, you have to have core values. And you have to hold your staff to those core values, and you have to hold your clients to those core values. And one of the most important core values you can have is respect. So every client that you've been talking about has been, quote unquote, disrespectful in some fashion. The ones that you have sent on down the road. What is interesting, and during the pandemic, as I was speaking, and even currently, more practices fired clients during the 2 to 3 years of the pandemic than they had fired in the 15 years prior. And the staff at those hospitals was ecstatic. And they fired them because of a variety of reasons, some of which was, and this is the economic side of things, they were so busy they didn't need them.
Right.
So they cherry picked. On the other hand, if they fired them for cause, then we should be doing that more often. At the present time, and Kelly alluded to this before we got on the call, the world is a very angry place, not just in veterinary hospitals, but everywhere, in person and virtually. I've seen it in airports with people trying to go over the counter to American Airlines representatives. You see it in driving, you see it everywhere. So part of our responsibility is to kind of stem some of that within our staff, and it starts at the top. If you are respectful for your team and you support them, and you find a client that is disrespectful, then to support your team, you have to get rid of that client. This is a profession that you have to respect your team, and to do so, it's building a family of clients that supports your core values. And so, yes, I'm giving the serious sermon at the moment, but I'd like to pass the discussion on anal sphincters over to Stacee, because I know she has a very short time before she has to go, and I'd like to see her thoughts from her experiences.
Yes, we'll call them assholes in my world. The anal sphincter word is too much for me. So I got my second job I was here at this, ended up being at this clinic for 20 years, but I got this job in 2002, and I was the third doctor they brought on. And it had started as single doctor practice out of the house, and then grown and grown, and the predominant clinic in Durango. And it had gotten out of hand, right? It had gotten to the point where the assholes were in there, and they're the kind of people that were jerks to some of the staff, but never to the doctor. And they weren't always jerks. They were just surging jerks. And so it's really hard to put your finger on it. Like, you didn't cross a line one specific time, like your client that says, you need to get your face slapped. It wasn't ever that clear. It was this gray zone that was really, Dr. Parkinson, I commend him. He recognized this. He's like, we've gotten out of control here. And you may have a practice, probably you do, that has the same situation. It just happens over time. And so at a staff meeting once, he said, all of you, every person on the team, you get to write down the top 3 clients that give you an ulcer. And he took the information and he compared the notes. And if your name was on multiple people's card, you got fired. He went in his office, he called him up, and it was hard. I admire him because they hadn't done anything right then. They might have done something, a year ago. But he said, you know what, we're kind of going through things. Your name came up as someone that causes distress to the clients or to the staff. And so we're going to go ahead and use this time now to let you find another vet. And these were high dollar clients. That's the other thing that's hard for the vet, is when these are high producing, $10,000, $15,000 a year clients, it's hard to let them go. But he set the tone, he reset the tone right there. And we loved it. We loved it. Even so much that when I became the leader of the clinic, when he retired, I carried this on. And one day I'm at the front desk and the phone rings and the receptionist gets it. And then she's just like, oh my God, she just hung up on me. So-and-so just hung up on me. And the other girls at the front desk are like, yeah, she's awful. I said, is she awful to you guys all the time? And they said, yes. So I just picked up the phone and I called her right back. And I'm like, hey, it's Dr. Stacee. This isn't working out. You got to go. And she of course has a whole nother, oh my God, what are you talking about? Ah. And I said, no, you hung up on the receptionist. She's like, I did not. I go, of course you did. I was standing right there. And she said, I said, and I'm very honest with people. I said, when your name comes up on caller ID, nobody wants to answer the phone. And that's a problem for me. And she's like, I had no idea this was how I was being received. And I said, okay, well, I have room for that. Let's talk about it. And this girl did a 180. She checked herself. She came in and she was more conscientious and mindful of her behavior. And she is still at that practice. And I think sometimes you do need to just have a talk about what's going on. Give them a shot, but you got to be prepared to hold the line. That's what I learned from Dr. Parkinson.
That's brilliant. I love the idea that the team got to write down those names, and the team said, hey, these are not who we want to serve. And for your team to say, and you voiced it, for your team members, if they know somebody's got their back, that builds that and contributes to the culture, the team. You're protected, it's safe, because you're willing to say, I think your needs would be better served somewhere else. It's rare for me, but there have been two come to mind that I had to have that conversation. And I'm like, here's your money back. I think you're best served with a different appraiser and consultant. It's rare, but you have to be able to do it because you need your team. You need to protect the culture. And who do you want to serve? Who do you want to be? But I also like your comment. Some people they haven't flipped the switch on self-awareness and they don't realize what they're doing. Can you give them the opportunity to learn? But hold tight, because if they don't, here's your records. Thank you for your service.
I have a question.
I have had that with two different clients. The same thing, Stacey. They just didn't know how they were acting. And one of them had switched to us from another practice and just raking my receptionist up and down the coal. And so I called her and I said, you don't get to speak to us that way. And she's like, really? That's how I had to talk to the receptionist at the last clinic to get anything done. Otherwise, they just ignored me. My messages got forgotten. The doctor never heard what I said, and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, I'm going to tell you right now that the nicer you are to my front desk, the more that you're going to get, because they are the gatekeepers, right? They're going to get you the appointments you want. They're going to bend over backwards, nice you are. She brings us warm brownies, fresh cut flowers from her garden. I love this woman. And she has literally become one of our best clients. And another one I went to go fire. And, come to find out that actually there were a couple I went to go fire. Come to find out they were on medications. Like they had one of the gentlemen had just had knee surgery. And I'm like, who are you? You are not the same client you were. And his daughter actually called and said, I'm so sorry. And I said, well, from now on, you call until he's off those meds. He came back better than he made my doctors cry. I said, you don't get to act that way. But, so I do think there's a huge point, Stacey, to what you were saying, that sometimes you just have to bring it to their attention. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I mean, none of us are perfect. I'm sure that there are people who can't stand me, and that's okay. But you have to try and be aware of it. So I don't know, but I think we want to give permission to people to, yes, you can liberate them.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, my question, Jenny. What's the fear? Why don't they let people go?
Money and fear of confrontation. I mean, it's like what Stacey was saying, when you have a client that's a $10,000, $15,000 client a year, and we have fired those guys. It is kind of terrifying if you're new, we're all worried about, we talked about recession before we got on here. It can be scary. And I do think that in general, the human beings that are in veterinary medicine are your golden retrievers, are your labs. They're not your German shepherds, right? They just want to, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Let me put my tail between my legs and give you a cute puppy eye, look, and you'll love me again. They don't want to confront. They don't want to, and then they'll take it, right? And they'll say, oh, you made this receptionist cry. Okay, so she doesn't have to deal with you anymore. Oh, well, then you made this receptionist cry. Okay, well, you don't have to deal with her. And they'll move around, right? Oh, you upset this tech. Well, then this tech's not going to come in the room with me. And the doctor ends up taking the brunt which is also not healthy, but because they want to protect their team, but they don't want to have that really difficult conversation that Stacey said, I'm sorry, you need to go someplace else. And so I do think that is a very big hurdle to overcome, that sometimes you have to be that person for your team.
A couple of things. Number one, I worked with some practices that as a Christmas present to the staff, they could vote to fire a number of clients. Different hospital, I believe, it may have been the same one. They had a holiday party, or they had a party where the staff got to dress up and act like their worst clients. So you start to make fun of it from that standpoint. So can we vote Jenni off the island? No, I'm kidding. But it is, I think it's important. We as veterinarians, and I'm currently the only one still a veterinarian a veterinarian who's still on the call. We're worried about it from an economic standpoint. We don't always think about it on a cultural standpoint. And now, with social media being so influential in people's decision-making, we are concerned about the unintended consequences of, you can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
So
Good point.
I think if you do it professionally, and it is interesting, and Jenni, I have a similar example where I fired a client and they came back an angel. I don't know whether they, were born again or whatever, but they became a much better client once.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how come. So, but I do think feeling the freedom, ladies and gentlemen, the veterinary hospitals, managers, doctors who are listening, you have the freedom to choose your clients, and you get the clients you deserve. So if you want to be if you're a jerk, you will have jerky clients. If you don't support your staff, you will have jerky clients. You can choose the pain that you want to inflict on your team and on yourself, or you can choose the pleasure that you want to have, so that veterinary medicine can be fun again.
Well said.
I think that's actually where we're
Amen.
going to leave it
Mic
today.
drop.
Yeah, I think Peter, I think you just wrapped
And
up
that's a wrap.
nicely. Yeah. You can't really go after that. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today on Unfiltered Vet Discussions. We would really actually enjoy your comments on this conversation or personal stories that you might want to share as well with us and the rest of the world who would read it. So please come on whatever favorite platform you have, share, pass this podcast around to other colleagues in the field that you think would be empowered by this message. And we will catch you next time on Unfiltered Vets Discussions. Until later.